Welcome to another episode of Your Music is Bad, and You Should Feel Bad with Matt and Blake. He's Matt, I'm Blake. Today we are going to talk about Opeth's Last Will and Testament, and if it sucks or not, because that's what we do. Matt, does it suck or not?
So I have very bad news, and I really think the podcast's in trouble because I like this album and I feel like we have a string of way too many episodes where we like things. I'm very concerned. And
I have a confession to make.
Yeah.
I also like this album.
Oh no.
We both like this album.
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem. I have something that I do want to point out. So, it's a prog album. Opeth is prog, right? And we like to talk about prog. We have opinions of prog. We talk about what prog is from time to time. There are lots of opinions about what prog is. I want to talk about how there's prog as big capital P prog. This kind of means a specific sound and genre. And then there's what prog means. Progressive, right? There's a lot of music out there that's prog with a capital P, the genre. It sounds a certain way. A lot of bands are guilty of this. Dream Theater is getting more and more guilty of this. And we've talked about this a lot. But prog with a capital P also has meant something going back into the 60s, 70s, right? When you got into, I'm not a historian and I can't think of bands right now, but you know what I mean. It has a certain sound. Things like the weird keys and stuff. And Jethro Tull is a good example because Ian Anderson is in Jethro Tull.
Yes.
And Ian Anderson is on this album.
So he is.
And a lot of this album sounds more like prog with a capital P than progressive.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, definitely. And I'm not surprised because honestly, at this point, what prog bands are really being progressive, and like that's a whole other topic we could get into, and maybe should even do like a.
And I know that that's a whole thing, but I think we have to talk about in that context.
But I'm not surprised because Opeth's whole thing, the last lots of years, and most of their albums since. Okay, what's the last one? I think the last one with Growls was Watershed, and then from Heritage, and I forget the name of a few of them, but
Don't Feel Bad. I remember Blackwater Park, and that's like it.
Like Okerfeldt he stopped growling, but it was more than that. Like they went fully retro prog for a while, like really barely even metal, arguably not. And so it's not surprising that this sounds very capital P prog. But you know what? The funny thing is, I liked it for that in a way because
I did.
It was like all the stuff they did on the Not Growly albums, which I did try to listen to at some point. Maybe not. At least heard a little bit of all of them, if not like fully absorbed them. And I found them all very boring in one way or another. But I found that taking what he did with those and mixing it with like the old, more death metal, the classic Opeth stuff on this one, I really liked it. And I like this one so much. Like we talked about how, I listened to it enough to have notes, and then I kept wanting to listen to it. And so I listened to it a couple more times just for the hell of it and for funsies because I was enjoying it. And it's like there's definitely classic Opeth moments from like the peak albums and stuff, but mixed with the stupid ass soft prog they were doing in between. But then it works. Like it works so much better. Like I basically think like Still Life and Blackwater Park are their peak. I don't like Ghost Reveries. A lot of people think Ghost Reveries is their best. It's a lot of people's favorite. And I liked this one so much, I was like, maybe I'll have to go back and give that another chance. Maybe I was wrong. And I tried to put it on, and I still don't like it. I started listening, like, I got to a couple tracks, and I was like, no, there's something about this one. I just don't like it. Never mind. Goodbye. Now, I might still go do a whole thing and try to do another episode where I listen to it again more carefully. And I really haven't.
This is the goal of mine as well, because I've been liking this album. I'm having your exact same problem. I'm going to go listen to this stuff. And I'm going to be disappointed.
And I've heard
But I'm glad you feel safe.
Watershed is really good. I never listened to Watershed at all because after Ghost Reveries, I was like, oh, I'm just done with Opeth now. So, but this one I like more than anything since Blackwater Park. And it's an interesting mix, which again, I basically described it the mix of their soft retro prog stuff with some of their classic sound, and then and a concept album, which I like the concept. I didn't care for the track naming. Like I would have,
Don't feel bad.
it's not a bad idea, but I would have preferred because they're supposed to be like sections of so it's called the Last Will and Testament.
That's the one.
And it's like the reading of a rich guy's will. And I don't know what the symbol's called.
So
It's
I don't know
supposed
what
to
the
mean
symbol is called either, but I did because it's Swedish. I looked a little bit what it meant, but I forgot what it's actually called. It's more or less the paragraph symbol that the Swedes use. And
okay.
to the way I understand this, to the way the small amount of reading I did, this is not necessarily supposed to be, or maybe people are saying it's not supposed to be the paragraphs of the will, but they're supposed to be these paragraphs of the story. Now, it sounded like maybe the initial part of it is sort of reading the will a little bit, but obviously it doesn't listen that way. There's stuff in here that's obviously not part of the will. There's stuff that does make sense that way, but that's mostly the Ian Anderson spoken word, which reading parts of the will makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I got it. I should look up what that character is, but I'll forget about it other than complaining.
I believe that's exactly it, is that Ian Anderson's spoken parts are the literal reading of the will. Everything else is like surrounding story. I think I heard the growls are supposed to represent the guy who died, the patriarch of the family, and that's all I know as far as those specifics. But
works for me.
It's not a
Good
bad
enough.
convention, but they could have done the symbol and a number and then like a subtitle
or some parentheses.
or
I don't know. Give me something.
Parentheticals are great. Always like
I
parentheticals.
get it. You're doing a thing. It's a hard concept prog. We're stupid plebes. Give us titles. We want to listen to your music and talk about it, and don't make us work so fucking hard.
There's a very fine line between like the kind of prog pretentious naming stuff that I appreciate and when I don't appreciate it. And like,
yeah, I don't need the title of a song to be the refrain, but like maybe a title that is somewhere in the song, or at least is what the hell you're singing about. Just help me out a little bit so I can refer to it other than symbol
right
2.
Yeah. And then
is bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because the one sort of exception to this, if you're familiar with Fate's Warning, A Pleasant Shade of Gray, which is decided into parts with no other titles. And I don't care for that, but I give it a pass because it's so good. But it still kind of sucks because I don't remember half the time which song I like, I like all of them, but like remembering which song is which part, I still, to this day, like I would have to like stare at like the liners while listening to it again and again to memorize them, and I've already like forgotten which one was which because there's just part and Roman numeral, and so both of these are like probably should have done something more of that, but whatever.
It's fine. I do want to point out something else about the track delineation and why it pisses me off. So once again, because this is prog and prog songs aren't always just songs straight through, I'm going to point out, I think it's song 4. There's pauses in the middle of the songs. About a third of the way through, there's a section that it's Stairway to Heaven. There's no other way getting around it. If you listen to it, it's Stairway. Stairway is in the song. And then there's a pause. And it sounds like a new song is starting. So unless you are looking at the progress on the track as you're listening, which maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But if you aren't, you're like, oh, okay, it's another song. So the end of song 4 is just Stairway and then blah, blah, blah. No, it's a third of the way through. It's confusing enough when we don't have names, but you also stop the track half the way through, and now I'm, okay, what the hell song am I on? Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
We're glad you brought the growls back, but don't be a dick.
I didn't catch Stairway.
It's in there.
There's a few moments that reminded me of other prog bands, but they were
obviously A lot of tall.
in a good way, and like modern ones too. There's like one section that always reminds me of Symphony X for some reason, and I think maybe one that reminded me of Pain of Salvation, but
That's fair.
not like that's definitely that song way, more like in a stylistic way. And so then I really don't mind it. And in fact, I like it because again, it's just like, oh, there's some different sounds on this album. Like I really
I
like,
felt like because I heard a lot of this stuff too. I don't remember specific examples other than Stairway. I felt like this was intentional. Like parts of this album were trying to be like homage to kind of classic prog. Again, bringing in Ian Anderson
yes,
and
yes,
having him play flute, which okay,
yeah,
it's your making obvious tall stuff, but there were other parts. It seemed like because this is I don't know World War I, and we're going back and reading a will, and we're looking at the paternal figures and the history and the stuff that came before. I was kind of wondering if maybe that's an intentional part of this whole concept. I don't know. Is Mike that big is he a big prog nerd? Does he not
I mean,
care? Is
yeah,
that
well,
just
yeah, because
incidental?
again, the last decade, he's just been doing like 70s prog LARPing, basically.
Well,
Like it's
maybe I
just
just need to
been
listen to more. Maybe it's
like,
not new. Maybe it's new to me.
yeah, like a lot of people were saying that Hail Communion, that's the one I forgot the name of, is sounds like Camel, 70s prog band I never got into. And yeah, every time I listened to those albums, I would be like, yeah, this sounds like 70s prog. And I stopped listening to 70s prog bands after I heard
Grew up.
all the real good ones. And then I was like, there's others, but I don't know, give a shit. But so as we said, Ian Anderson does the spoken part and play flute. There was a moment early on where I was like, oh, is he doing some singing? And then I realized no, Zuckerfeld's just singing like Ian Anderson a little
Worth
for a
noting,
minute.
and I haven't
Uh,
gone back to listen to after I found this little factoid. The guy from Europe, the band Europe, Final Countdown, etc., apparently does backup vocals on the second song.
oh,
Uh,
interesting.
something Tempest, Johnny Tempest,
I'd be
something like
curious
that.
to
So
have
I
to
need to
look
go
for
back
that
and listen to
because
see what that sounds like. It might be what you're hearing.
it could be. It could be. There's a lot of really good vocals, and I was paying a lot of attention because one of the things that I didn't like about Ghost Reveries, before Ghost Reveries, Mikhail has like two styles of singing, right? He has the growls and his like soft
The
melodic
roar, as the
vocals,
kids
and
call it.
there's not a lot of in between. He's really just got A and B, and on Ghost Reveries, it's like he tried to add a C, which was I think a little more of like a belt style singing, where he tried to like stretch his range a little, and I didn't like it. Not that it's bad to do that. Not that it's bad to grow and try new things. Like you should. It's better than
That's
if it was
prog.
just
That's prog.
exactly like Blackwater Park again or something. So it's good that it's different, but I didn't like it. So, and after all these years, like the way he did it then, I thought it sounded like it was a new thing because it sounded kind of strained, I thought. But so like
As a
just
belt register can be, especially if you're not
that's
used
true.
to it.
That is true. Any of that he's doing now, I think sounds fine. Like I didn't have any problem with really any of the vocals. The only thing I almost had a problem with vocally wise was there were certain parts where, and again, this could just be the 70s prog affectations, where certain vocal parts would be super drowned in reverb, like he's at the back of a room and like it's like way in the back of the mix then too because it's so reverbed up, and it kind of sounded like, well, maybe those parts weren't as strong, but it works fine. And most of it's not the entire album. I would be annoyed if it was the entire album, but it's just certain parts. And actually I would say like this album's very good in terms of doing different stuff to fit different sections, like the keyboards are really good. That was another thing that started with the retro prog phase. There weren't keyboards, at least not a keyboardist in classic Opeth. I don't know if they might have sprinkled some in the studio at some point. I'd have to look into it, but it's very noticeable here because there's like electric piano and stuff, but it works really well, especially on this album and with the style and the concept and
Yeah,
everything.
that was another thing. There was a guy, Dave Stewart, not to be confused with Dave Stewart of Eurythmics, who is apparently a guy who's done a lot of, I guess, keyboard and orchestration and programming. I can't remember exactly all the things, but he's a guy who is very involved in the keyboards in a bunch of prog stuff for a bunch of bands that I did not recognize because I don't know all the bands. But it sounded like he was a influential, important guy, and that might be very related.
That could be.
You have to
Uh,
look up Dave Stewart and not of Dave and Annie fame.
Another note I had, the very beginning of the album, there's a little like intro sound effect. I think it's kind of sounds like someone coming through like a gate or a door. I usually like that kind of thing on a prog concept album, like the
Sure. Well,
atmosphere, but I didn't really care for it on this one. I noticed after listening to it a few times that some of it is just very quiet. But because the first time I listened to it, I didn't hear most of it. It just seemed like there was a delay before the album started. And then I heard a little bit of sound, the little kind of like gate opening, and then it starts. So it sounded there was like literally like a second or two of sound effect, and then the song starts.
I will
So like,
have to listen
why
to that
bother?
again. I'm not even remembering it at all.
Yeah,
I might have missed it entirely.
exactly. No, you could. That's why I think it's kind of silly to even bother then. But then one time I listened to it I heard a little more something before that, but it's still just like, I don't know. If you're gonna do that, it shouldn't be like, what was that sound? And then the album starts. Like
No, it's an
that's
Easter egg. You have to hunt for it at the beginning
yeah,
of the album.
yeah, exactly. So,
What are you gonna do?
but that's fine otherwise. The riffs, there's some very classic Opeth sounding riffs, which makes sense because the band is Opeth.
That's
But again, it was like
fantastic.
there was time. You know what though? In retrospect, listening to Ghost Reveries, there was a bunch of riffs where I was like, I don't like these riffs. What are they doing? It's not very Opeth like. And so, ironically, the fact that these sound more like, oh yeah, that's an Opeth riff, I liked it more. It, again, blended with different stuff, giving a little different flavor. And I believe this is the first full concept album they've done since Still Life, full like story based one anyway.
I believe you.
And
Sure, why not?
yeah, but whatever they were doing on Ghost Reveries, I still don't like it. And I was like, what is this crap? And I think it also might be, again, I shouldn't overdo it because I'll probably do a proper listen and re-review and like, here's why I don't like this, your favorite
Yeah.
Opeth album.
Well, and that's what we're supposed to do on this podcast is
I know.
really complain about stuff.
It's really a
Right
problem.
here, we're finding stuff to complain about on things we like, which we're trying. We're trying really hard.
I know. Why the hell did I like this album so much? I
don't know. I don't understand
liked
either.
Opeth for years and years and years.
We've had this conversation. We were talking about Opeth albums I should go back and examine because I was going to give it a deeper dive. And you're like, well, not this.
Yeah.
And not this. And not this. And I was like, oh, so any of them? Yeah, just the one, Blackwater. Oh, for like 8 years ago or whatever?
Okay. More than that. So, Blackwater Park is from like 2000 or 2001, like the golden age.
20 years ago.
Yeah, it's real old.
Time has no meaning anymore.
It's really like a good period for prog metal. You got like peak, like Pain of Salvation, Symphony X, all kinds of stuff around then.
Before it all went
the one
to shit.
Before it, Still Life, is really, really good. And then the ones before that, a lot of people like them. They're still good as far as like death metal, but like Still Life and Blackwater Park to me are like the obvious peak, and I would listen to those two first and then maybe work out from there. I still need to give Watershed another chance. Nothing else.
Fair enough. All right, so back to the task at hand, though.
Yeah.
Why do we like this album so much, despite the fact that it's not terribly proggy and it's not really anything new under the sun?
It's proggy
Do we like
enough
it because it reminds us of something from 20 years ago? But that's defeating the point of prog. Why do we like this?
Couldn't find the comment. Either Angry Metal Guy or the guy behind the curtain, Phil, left a comment on my Facebook when I was talking about something else about how Mikhail finally managed to like do real jazz or something on here. There's like a jazzy part that he thought I don't know what he meant, because I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, because Opeth has always had, jazzy parts, but it's not ever quite like, oh, they could play jazz. It's just like jazzy, again, in the way that a prog person
There are some grooves
might
in here.
hear things as jazz. But there's some of that on here for sure, and it's good, but it's still like, I really wanted to find that comment, because I'll just, again, I'll just ask and be like, what was your comment about the jazz thing? But there's a little bit of that on here that
talk about stuff. Show your
works really well.
face. Show your face.
Yeah, I mean,
not like that though. That's creepy.
It's so funny because like he was like, oh, it's really good. I'm like, yeah, whatever. For new Opeth, like, because when I first heard the first track, one of the first singles that came out, like, okay, he's growling again, but so what? I wasn't sure if I was going to like the guitar tone because it sounded a little bit thin, but it turns out I really like it. It's a little, it's not really thin. It's just like not bassy. It's like, it's not too far back to like a classic death metal tone, but just enough, like a good balance, because there used to be, I feel like guitar tones got thicker and thicker to where they started to use way more low frequencies, and a lot of older stuff doesn't have that, but it actually can then work better to mix as like complementing the bass and stuff versus just like
How about
John
that?
Petrucci's tone got like way too thick to where it takes up all the frequency space. And so he's like, it's like a rich chocolate cake. And I'm like, yeah, that's not good for you, man. You should be eating chocolate cake all the time.
Yeah,
And
see, this is what happens. This is what happens.
yeah,
It's fine.
uh,
I
but
I am
I
harboring Zafatis.
but I ended up liking the tone on this album really well when I actually heard the album. You know, I was just expecting like, it's gonna be growls, but so what? But I really liked it like a lot, and I can't even say there was like a song where I was like, except this one piece of crap song. Like, it's
There
not
was
too
one
long.
moment I didn't like.
Okay,
It was pretty fast, and it was like cheesy, like theatrical capital P prog interjection. There's this one part. I don't know. I'm sure it's a story point, but some character says, no, no, no. And I'm like, that was
I
the dumbest
I must have.
theater
Yes,
nerd shit. I hated that. Take
that's
that out.
hilarious.
How dare you? You know what I'm talking about. I know you've heard this.
Like, I didn't take note of it as well, but like I probably noticed there are some like punctuations of the. Was it like singing note or was it like the narration?
Kind of. It
Oh,
was
okay.
very close to the sound I just made. Don't make me do that again.
Okay, I won't. I won't. That's very
But
funny
it was derpy and cheesy, and like I said, music theater nerds. Someone is trying to
though.
act a little bit, and it was dumb. I hated it.
Yeah. Well,
Everything
yeah.
else,
I mean,
that was bad.
like I don't know it well enough to say
Some
there
things
aren't a
bad.
few little moments that are whatever, but overall it was just like I enjoyed listening to it. It's not too long. I listened to it
No, it's an easy listen.
again. I'm gonna keep listening to it, which is
I
like
worry
almost
it shouldn't
never
be
happens.
this easy of a listen.
I
Feel like
mean,
it should have been a
it's
little
good.
chewier.
But that's sometimes I think that's better these days for prog because when they do the
Probably.
opposite, it's rarely worth it because it's like Dream Theater now. They always like this song needs to have the same sort of 15 variations on each riff and like interpolating rhythms and meter like the same shit. But it's like, but you've done all that before a bunch of times. So now it just sounds like you're doing the same shit. It's why I call the diddly doos because it's always diddly doo, diddly doo, diddly diddly
You got
diddly
to
diddly
diddly
doo.
do. You have to do it.
So it's very good balance of not overdoing that on this album. I wanted to make note that the last song, "A Story Never Told,"
The one with a title,
yes, the only one with the
only
title,
one.
but it works so well because it's the last song, and that is also like the repeated chorus, and it's something to do with like there's some kid who's like an illegitimate kid, and whatever. Who gives a shit? I don't
Don't
really know
give
the
away the
story.
story. No, I can tell you the
I don't
story
know
because I
this.
looked it up.
Oh, okay, I didn't even get
That's
that
the
deep
only
into
reason
it
why.
because it doesn't matter. Like there's something
It really
about
doesn't.
a good concept album. You just need enough of a sense. Like if you want to get deeper into the story, it should be enough there that you can. But a really good concept album, you don't have to know the story. You just get the sense as you're listening to it. The story is happening or being told. Ironically, unlike a story never
I
told.
was just gonna say it.
But
Glad you beat me to it.
what this is nothing to do with the music itself. But I kept thinking of kept wanting to make jokes about. I kept wanting to call it the greatest story never told because I was thinking about how like Christians will call the Bible like
Yeah.
the greatest
Oh,
story
yeah.
ever told.
Oh God. If
And
only it hadn't been.
because there's a few like Neil Morris has a bunch of references to the greatest story ever told, and I was like, it's
Man.
debatable. There's
Yeah.
a lot of stories on it.
There's lots.
But I kept thinking the greatest story never. But it's just a story never. But it's good. It's concise. It's more thematic, more hooky than most of the album. but it puts a nice end on it. And in this case, much better than like going off on like a 10-minute diddly-do wank fest or something. So,
I mean, I'll take some diddly-doos. I'm always here for some diddly-doos, but
sometimes
it totally worked. It was a good cop-out of the whole thing.
Right. Sometimes the big progged out closer is a good way to go, but in this case, it worked really well that it wasn't, and that they didn't do that.
Whichever I meant. Words are hard.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we both liked it. We don't have enough to bitch about it. This is a shorter episode. What the hell?
We got look, half hour's plenty. Like the last one,
fine.
couple of cut down, they were under 30.
All right.
Honestly, I'm not worried about length at this point. I just rather get them out and get, in a timely fashion, which we will. And
that's reasonable.
But we're gonna have to find some crap to crap on soon, because
I can always find crap to crap on. It's just whether it's worth talking about or not.
I've been very out of the habit of listening to music masochistically, and so I need to reintroduce that to my life so that there's more crap to crap on, because I think that's part of the problem. And I have no idea.
If you haven't looked up Dorkscography yet,
I looked them up. I haven't been following them.
What I like is they will have viewer, reader polls or whoever. Hey, here's a bunch of artists, and you idiots can vote on who we should do a listen through yet. And sometimes it's terrible, and sometimes that's the point. So we're gonna listen to all these albums, the discography for the dorks,
right?
And there's absolute stinkers in there. Some of it's worthwhile because you're going back and like, hey, it's this band again. Like right now I'm in the group right now. Dorkscography is going through the Borkniar, which is good because I haven't listened to all the stuff going back, and it's kind of pointing out to me how some of their stuff from the very old, the original, the first album, whatever, first couple albums, is black metal in all the ways that black metal needs evolution to be listenable, which Borkniar did. And I really liked a bunch of their more recent albums, which are black metal, but with prog and with production and stuff like that, whereas the older stuff is bad. So it's a good time, and sometimes people will intentionally pick stinkers, and then you get to listen to stinkers.
Yeah.
I never
got that into Borkniar, but I know there's some really good musicians who have been in it and done other stuff too, so that'd be interesting to check out. Also, speaking of like suggestions and like audience pick stuff, we're totally open. Let me address we're totally open. You look at the little mark that tells me where the camera is.
No, it's a camera. You don't. That's right. You have a mark.
We're totally open to suggestions, and you can torture us by making us listen to stuff right now. So the main issue right now is that we need more audience to get audience suggestions. If
we have to podcast more for that.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
The algorithms hate us now. They have abandoned us.
Yeah, they do, because people have life.
So if you are hearing this and you want to give us suggestions, either leave us comments on YouTube or find us on Bluesky, the new better Twitter,
which I still call Bluesky, because that's what it looks like.
I know. I was going to call it Bluesky, but I also just wanted to make sure they actually knew what I meant.
No, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but from here on out, we'll be calling it Bluesky. That's what I do.
That'll be good.
So I'm at the one
because I'm on it,
and Blake is on there at Buffalo 70.
Yeah, I should probably
on the
fix that so it's something that isn't stupid. But I
don't know. Doesn't matter.
I don't know how to do these things.
Doesn't matter.
But yeah, I want to hear some suggestions. I've heard suggestions in like the meat space, but they were all terrible suggestions. Maybe don't make suggestions like pop music that the kids are listening to. I mean, I might listen to it, but if there's not enough there to talk about, you're just punishing me. Don't do that to me.
We did a little bit of that back in the day, but like when we listened to that one Katy Perry album, but it helped that there was also,
thank God.
Yeah, there was also a whole, more notable than the album itself, there was this ridiculous promotional thing where she was in a house and they filmed her talking to like Neil deGrasse Tyson and shit like that. And it was just, that's the part I remember. I don't even remember what was on the album. I just remember her talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, him trying to explain like basic math concepts to her. and stuff like that. It
I'm
was,
guessing that went poorly.
yeah, this is very bad. But like if at some point we have a bit of an audience built up again, because we had some pretty decent numbers in the early days, it might become more difficult to give us suggestions and more some kind of a, like you're saying, like they have polls and stuff like that.
Sure.
So right now you can pretty much get in, and unless there's some
Get in on
really,
the ground
really,
floor.
yeah,
Come on.
yeah,
Join
get
us.
in on the ground
Grow
floor.
us. Grow with
The
us.
value of your suggestions can only go up, and not monetarily. You're not going to get any money out of this,
absolutely.
just like we won't.
We're
But
not. No.
the odds of us,
No pyramid schemes here, kids. It's no value at all.
we almost can't turn down a suggestion because it's engagement. It would be neglecting what little audience we have. So
fair.
give us suggestions now. That's what
Now.
when I'm doing calls to action, I look at the thing and go, now.
Yes.
Do
That's
it
it.
now. There's
Also, you can yell at us. I like being yelled at.
yeah,
No, I
you
don't.
can tell us we're wrong.
Wait,
Except
yes, on
that
the internet, I like being yelled at.
we've
That's
been
what I
saying
like.
things are good, so they don't even care to like tell it. I mean, I'm still getting comments on
Tell us
old
we're
stuff
wrong
where
about
they
that.
tell us we're wrong.
Tell us we shouldn't like something. That's
Yeah.
valid. That's what we're doing. We're sitting here telling you why you
absolutely.
shouldn't like stuff. Usually,
Actually,
turn it around.
that's what we should say. Anytime there's an album that we like or enjoy or don't have criticism, we should be like, if you dislike this, please tell us why. We need to hear the other perspective.
We need some negative reinforcement.
Yes, we need negative reinforcement. Liking albums is just melting my brain, and
Honestly, we're sorry.
I don't know. I feel like
terrible.
maybe I'm losing some perspective. I think the stuff that I've been saying is decent is actually decent, but who knows?
It's possible. We're getting old, and our tastes probably suck now. We are not cool.
But then we're never dislike cool, but it's worse now. I should dislike all the stuff. Oh, I was going to say, right. I do dislike a lot of there's a lot of, like, that's one reason I have been hesitant to jump into the, like, current mainstream pop stuff, because, like, I don't know. When I started the podcast in, like, 2015, I didn't give a shit. I was like, I don't care how, like, young people music, whatever. I'm going to tell you it's bad anyway. That's but right. Now I'm like, now it's a little more right. Like, you get people are gonna. They're gonna think that anyway, and they already think that, like, they think that if you talk about a metal band, like they're like, oh, you fucking guy. What? So it doesn't really matter. But I don't know. I'm not incentivized to focus on it. It's also the music's not that interesting. That's part of the problem. Sure. As mostly I was gonna be talking about why I think artists are getting hyped up so much when their music sounds like a bunch of other shit and is not remarkable in any way.
Well, on the plus side, we have in the next year, again, because the festivals and things happen kind of every year, we've got the second to last or whatever Prog Power with all kinds of silly shit happening. So we can talk about how, well,
it's
there's a whole
last. I think there's a couple more, but I don't even know because of the whole COVID year thing.
But we're going to complain about those bands, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, yes.
And I'm going to go to Milwaukee Metal Fest again because that was a great time. But there's a lot of bands on there, and I think we probably have to complain about them. I think Down, Phil Anselmo's band, I think is on that ticket now, and we probably have to complain about that. I feel like there's a bunch of other bands I haven't heard of that this is fertile ground for saying that stuff sucks. So that's going to be good. Look forward to that in the coming year. Going to be doing some listening. But if there's any bands on there I really need to pay attention to that you, the viewer, know about, good or bad, please tell me about that, and I will be sure to tell you whether you are wrong or not. Again, that's the show. So
yeah, it is. Also, you reminded me of something. We used kind of a tradition of reviewing end of year lists, partially because I would just find myself like missing a bunch of stuff, and then like the end of the year list comes around and a bunch of stuff like, oh, I haven't heard of this at all. And so it's a way, like, there's so much stuff that gets hyped up, and then I'll check it out and be like, that's not at all interesting. I don't like it. And so it's hard for me to follow the hype and even find the good stuff. And so I've gotten more and more resistant to the hype throughout the year. But at the end of the year, it's like you got to narrow it down to like 10 to 20, although some lists are way longer than that. But I suggest we find a few, like Angry Metal Guy is the most obvious one, especially because they aggregate the individual writers' top 10 list. So that's a real good one. It's interesting to see what comes out on that. But maybe if we can find one or two others that seem to be obviously not too mainstream,
right?
It's just dumb.
Not
Like
just
there
like
was
fucking Loudwire or whatever. But
yeah, like Loudwire. Somebody posted, Nick Nocturnal. He's like a streamer, YouTuber. His thing is
I'm the streamer I know.
He's very
Well,
big
and
now.
you, I guess.
He plays guitar and he's not bad at it, but he just uses it kind of as a joke to do like meme riffs, like what if Metallica wrote an Opeth song? Just like what? That's not anything. And they're like, wait, we like this. Like, would it? Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna talk about it. They're just gonna go, oh, and it's gone. Or like the one I hate the most, not just him, it's a whole meme format for like content where they're like the different levels of playing a prog riff, and it'll like progress from. But it's nonsense. It's stupid. It's totally
very tiresome.
ridiculous.
I don't want it.
Yeah. And so, but he posted his awards for the year, the equivalent of his top list, but like with more specific best X, Y, and Z. And people were just ragging on it because it was all just like Loudwire, basically. It was like nothing remotely that you wouldn't easily like Linkin Park, Whitechapel, like really metal bands you can't not hear of if you ever type the word metal
right
into Google. So
God, before I forget, speaking of things that are potentially mainstream and problematic, did you hear that Sumerian Records acquired the Hard Times?
Yeah, that's probably going to be bad.
That seems bad.
Seems bad. Seems real bad.
Might have to look up some Sumerian Records bands that point out why that's bad.
The Hard Drive and Hard Times and Hard Drive, which was funny because for a while there, when Hard Times had already fallen off, but Hard Drive was kind of decent. It was obviously more gamer oriented. But then I know a bunch of the people who were writing good stuff on Hard Drive left already. So I think things were already headed downhill before Sumerian bought it. So now it's just probably totally.
Also, why the hell does like Sumerian have money to buy semi-successful? Why are they? Why
record
would
label?
they?
I don't know.
But why did they want comedy websites?
Probably force people to write dumb jokes about their bands and thus make it not interesting.
That seems awful.
That's my guess, but that's probably no, it does sound that it's probably going to be awful.
All right, well.
So yeah,
it's right in line with their shit. Cool.
Yep. All right, so sweet. New Opeth, what the hell? Why did we like it so much? Please explain.
It was good. Like, subscribe, flame us in the comments.
Like, subscribe, hit us up on Bluesky, and
we'll see you next time.
And it won't be that long. And there's more backlog episodes that probably come off after this now. Or wait, or maybe not. Maybe I'm caught up.
I don't know.
Did I post Modern? Oh no, Modern Yacht. I didn't post Modern Yacht yet. I don't think.
Yep,
but
that'll be good.
And then Beat Part 2 is coming.
All right.
I saw the show.
We'll see you fuckers.
Right. I'm turning it off now. How do I stop the recording without leaving?